All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 412, Ethically Challenged. I said it right. Good. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator, Lauren Brooks.
Yo.
The personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
On the advice of counsel, I've decided...
Are you sure? We have Richard the Lionhearted.
Shalom.
And we have the Doge in charge, Brian Martinez, working in the background to make everything happen. And he cannot say hi, but he can make everything happen the whole time. And that's how you know he's here. Before we get into everything, I'm not changing the subject. I'm kind of expanding it a little bit. What you're seeing on the screen here is obviously not the article. It is Twitter. Richard actually sent me this tweet, and I started going down a little rabbit hole here. And this is in the UK, where they're considering passing an assisted suicide law, and it is almost inevitable at this point that it will eventually pass.
And it will affect me mostly. So.
Right. And this does pertain directly to Richard's situation, actually. It also pertains to thousands of other people. And it is egregious. It's unbelievable that this happened, but it did. And the sad thing is, I've seen a similar thing start to happen multiple times in the United States in a hospital. So it's not something that is rare. It's not limited to one area. It's not a result necessarily specifically of socialized medicine. It is a foible of medical personnel and their arrogance. And I say this as a person who can be considered medical personnel. I'm on the very bottom rung. I have the absolute least amount of training that you can have and still be considered medical personnel. But I count among the arrogant. And I do find this appalling that people just let things like this happen and don't double check themselves. They don't even single check themselves often enough. And so I wanted to add this in because in a discussion about assisted suicide in which medical personnel can introduce the topic, guide somebody through it, and then administer it, and in some instances, as we've seen, even against the will of the individual that is being assisted in the alleged suicide, which to me indicates more of an execution. This is highly relevant. So before we get into this, I will do the spiel and let you know that, as always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire, especially when we contradict things like the popular female narrative on the mass murderer who just killed her 3 children and then faked a particular type of mental health condition that doesn't represent the majority of women who kill their children. 4 out of 5 women who kill their children don't have it, and she was never diagnosed with it. Right? All I have to do is say something like that, and the hoes, the thoughts, they will fight back. They will try to get us canceled. They will try to get us removed. They will try to get us defunded, demonetized, which we already are. And so if you want to be able to support us, then we strongly encourage you to switch at least your support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out, because we aren't going to cancel ourselves. If you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, where you might get censored, we won't censor you unless we absolutely have to. And that's if you advocate violence, then we'll censor you, because that actually is bordering on planning to commit a crime. But aside from that, you can send your tip to, or your tip jar comment to feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, where I get called a man all the time. And this is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And with that, we will get into, this is something that's going to be really hard for me to not get extremely enraged the whole time we're discussing it. Because I work with people with disabilities, and in particular, I work with people with intellectual disabilities. And within medicine, there are two populations that I would say are profoundly vulnerable. One of them is people with intellectual disabilities, and the other one is people whose age makes them incapable of fighting back one way or another, whether it's the very old or the very young, and either they can't communicate or they don't have the physical strength or whatever. And there are a lot of protections out there for all three groups. And yet I consistently see, policies being made. We get alerts in my company. Watch out for this happening. Don't let this happen. Remember, you're supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that, because of incidents that happen elsewhere where a mentally disabled person has fallen through the cracks, and something like this has happened, or some other form of abuse or neglect has happened. And, of course, every time administrators in my company get alerted to something like that, even though it wasn't our company, they still go through and alert the staff, all of us, that, hey, somebody somewhere did this. We just want to make sure you know better. And it's, some people get annoyed with stuff like that. I'm just shocked that this stuff happens that much. Because you would think, if you are taking care of human beings, and your job, your career, your focus is helping human beings, that you would not allow a mistake to happen that would kill one. But it does happen. And it happens often enough that it makes the news, probably about 2 or 3 times a month, where somebody's behavior was so egregious, it gets beyond their local news. And you can find videos about it online. You can find news stories after news stories of somebody stealing from someone in a nursing home, somebody stealing somebody's medications, somebody giving somebody the wrong medications, and the person that they gave it to dies. Just beatings, like overt, deliberate abuse. And some things are even dumber, like humiliation and stuff like that. There was a woman not too long ago that was all over Twitter for incorporating one of her patients under her care into a video where she did like stripper style dancing around this person, like this person was an accessory she was using or a piece of furniture that she was dancing around. Like he was the pole, and it's just every time I see something like that, it's like somebody dropped hot tar into my chest. And this person cannot. It's not just that they can't consent. This person cannot communicate their refusal, or if they can communicate it, they physically can't defend it. And it's evil to bully someone in any way, to pretend to take care of someone and then not do it, to harm someone on purpose or through your deliberate negligence that can't even defend themselves against what you're doing to them. So, this when I see stuff like this, and we're already talking about the same profession being given the power of life and death, where it's going to be their job to counsel people about it, get their consent to do it, and then kill them. It terrifies me. Absolutely terrifies me for everyone. And it's not just for people who can't defend their refusal and maybe can't even communicate it. It's for everyone, because sometimes they can do this to people who are perfectly capable. All it takes is for somebody to write down that you're out of your mind right now. This person is suffering from a condition called hospital-induced delirium, which causes hallucinations. So when they tell you that the nurse came into their room and did XYZ crazy-ass bad thing, they probably experienced that, but it didn't happen. If there's no physical evidence, then you shouldn't take action on it, right? That's all it takes for somebody to get away with abusing a perfectly healthy person that could object. And I've seen that too. So to get to the start of this, the individual who tweeted this seems to have some disability focus there. Disability awareness is everything, right? So this is probably someone like me who has a family connection to people with disabilities and also maybe a work connection. So that's probably why they ran across this story. It says, "I don't want to die. Man with Down syndrome starved to death in hospital." And she's quoting from the news article. "The family of a disabled man who died after not being given any food for 9 days while being treated in an NHS hospital has told ITV News, 'We thought he was having nutrition, but as it turns out, they were starving him.'" If you have somebody in the hospital who is vulnerable, check on them every day. Because if the staff makes a mistake, especially because usually they don't make a mistake like what was made here at the nursing level. That's usually a doctor or a like a speech pathologist, that they're the ones that determine if you have a swallowing issue and stuff like that. So it's a higher up. And a lot of times in healthcare, the nursing aides and the nurses are afraid of the higher ups, and they will not say anything if something doesn't look right. There are those who will. There are those who are ethical enough to do it. But from personal experience, I can tell you that there is no way that the system can protect you against retaliation after that happens. And I've personally experienced that retaliation, and I've also witnessed that retaliation. So a lot of times stuff like this, it's just assumed they know what they're doing, and that's all that's said. A person in this situation may have even complained, "Hey, I'm not getting anything to eat. I'm really hungry. Can't you give me something to eat?" And the hard part is, the people taking care of them might have said, "We can't." and felt terrible, but done nothing. We thought he was having nutrition, but as it turns out, they were starving him. This comes as an ITV News investigation has revealed a crisis in the care of learning disabled and autistic people. Bereaved families of people with learning disabilities have told ITV News they believe their children died due to failures in NHS learning disability care. Quote, they were starving him. Adrian Pulton, 56, had Down syndrome and was admitted to Poole Hospital in September 2021 with a broken hip after a fall at his care home. His hip was on the mend, but he was incorrectly listed as nil by mouth, which in the United States, they have to throw in the Latin. So instead of nil by mouth, it's none per oral. And that's a silly difference. So it'll say NPO on the medical order. And if you don't know what NPO stands for, you don't know that your family member has been ordered no food, that they can't eat. He didn't have to be NPO. He didn't have to be, I guess it would be NBM in the UK. But doctors had done this, and he was fed nothing for 9 days. So they did physically starve him to death. He went through all of the pain and suffering of starvation. They didn't give him food, and they didn't give him water. They maybe gave him IV fluids. Maybe. I've worked in the hospital with patients who are transported there from care homes for various reasons in the past, and also with patients that have been transported from nursing homes. I've also worked with family members of mine who are elderly. And one thing that I can tell you is if a person has a speech impediment, which many people with disabilities have for various reasons. If somebody has an intellectual disability, they may have a speech impediment because the speech center of their brain didn't fully develop, or the nerves that give them the capacity to make the correct movements with their tongue and their lips in order to make the letter sounds of speech didn't develop properly, or they have malformations that can cause the speech to sound different. They can even have dental issues that can cause speech to sound different. The moment people in medicine have difficulty understanding you, rather than admit they don't understand what you said, they smile and nod. They say, "Oh, okay," and kind of pat you on the head and walk away. So if what you, Richard, what did you say?
I've had that happen to me so many times.
I bet you have, especially in the UK, where there's like 1,000 accents in a mile. And have you ever tried pushing the issue and saying, "Hey, I was trying to say,"
Yeah, I still get ignored.
and they still ignore you?
Yeah, I put a request for an ACT machine, but it was denied.
And it was denied. Oh, geez. So they won't even give you a talker.
No.
Geez. You almost might have to carry around a pen and paper.
They said I can use my notes on my phone.
Your phone, yeah. Because you can type.
Yeah.
That is at least one good thing. So for the layman in the listening audience, a talker is a tablet about the size of an iPad without the attached keyboard. And it usually has icons on the front, and you can program in phrases, words. It can be set up so that the individual using it can type into it, and it will speak clearly what you type, or you can have an icon, a button, basically, for I have to go to the bathroom, or I'm hungry, or my foot hurts, or anything. You could tell it to put, you could program it to say the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plains, and it would do it. So it's nice when you have someone who is capable of using a device like that, but not capable of articulating. And different things can cause that. They might fully understand language. They might be able to read and type, but for whatever reason, they cannot enunciate well enough for people to understand what they have said. And so there are tools available, but they are expensive, and it's a lot of times the payer, which in the U.S. is frequently Medicaid, and in the U.K. is the medical system, the socialized medical system, will deny this because it's expensive. And yes, Richard Bier, something like what Stephen Hawking had, although they've advanced, and a lot of times the vocalization sounds better. It sounds more natural now. And yes, nothing per oral is often ordered for someone who has difficulty swallowing, or for it's usually ordered because the person has something going on that they can't eat normally, or they shouldn't eat right now. Right. So instead, they would normally be getting IV nutrition, and there's only a limited amount of that can happen. But this individual wasn't getting any of that. And so after 9 days, he passed away. What I've noticed, and this is, I hate to be like this, but men will more often stop if they don't understand what you said and tell you, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. I'm not trying to be rude, but can you repeat yourself? Women get annoyed or impatient, or they won't, they don't want to embarrass themselves by admitting they can't understand you. Right. And so they gloss over the moment and just keep on going. So it's very possible. A lot of people with Down syndrome are pretty easy to understand when they talk, but sometimes if someone also has autism, they don't articulate for other reasons. Or they can also have speech impediments that you don't know about. And it can make it difficult for them to get things across. And the other thing is, I think a lot of times when a person with disabilities has a complaint, I haven't had anything to eat today. My body part hurts. I didn't sleep last night. Somebody hit me. All of these things, they're not believed, when they should at least be believed enough that you believe the thing they're describing could have happened, and you start looking for evidence to determine whether it did or not. And in the case of I haven't had anything to eat today, unless this person is on an extremely limited diet, the obvious solution is, well, it's not going to hurt them this one time to have something to eat. Unless there's a habit of breaking a very important medical diet that's ordered by their doctor, using this as a method, there's no harm in giving somebody something, as long as, even if you don't believe that they didn't have anything to eat. Right. But in this situation, they had a medical order. The doctor said nothing by mouth, nothing. And nobody questioned it. In a guy with a broken hip and no other diagnosis from the hospital. So if we look at the article, which is a bit longer, this is a gentleman who was neglected to death. This is a picture, I believe, in his home. Actually, a video in his home. And she published this part. So the rest of the story. His father, Derek Pulton, told ITV News, "Not being medical, we just naturally thought he was having nutrition, a feed. But as it turns out, they were starving him." Leslie, I believe that's Bungay, but it might be Bungie. Adrian's sister said, "We were so worried. He was really poorly. He did look at me and Dad. He said to me, 'Leslie, I don't want to die.' He knew he was going to die. It was just awful." By the time Adrian's family realized he wasn't being fed, he was too unwell to recover. He died on September 28th, 2021, 2 weeks after being admitted to a hospital. The thing about that is, if you're without food for long enough, and giving you food can actually be dangerous too. If they don't get your fluids up and introduce things very slowly and carefully, you can end up with kind of a gut reaction. It's not a good one, and you get sick from it. And if it was 9 days, like any little amount of fat they introduced would have sent his gallbladder into a fit. They usually try to give you some thin gruel or something like that to get you back, if you've been starving, to get you back into being like accustomed to eating. And the other thing that can happen is that your body is just too damaged by dehydration and lack of nutrition to process your food. You can't. Yep. And Shadowclaw says dehydration can cause lithium levels to spike. And I will tell you this, lithium, when they give you lithium, if it's prescribed medication, they give it in, a lot of things they give you in milligrams, not lithium, it's in micrograms. The difference between your lithium level being too low versus your lithium level being too high is measured in micrograms, and it's not a big number. So the middle ground where they want you to be is an even smaller number, right? It's about halfway. And once you cross that, it's very difficult if you're malnourished for your body to process that. Your kidneys can't handle it. And you have to, Richard Beer pointed out, patients on lithium have to have regular blood tests to monitor the amount in the system. When they gave me lithium because of what Prozac was doing to me, when they gave me Prozac because of what my steroids were doing to me, where they didn't consider that it was a side effect of the steroids, it made me sick. But they didn't do blood testing. And then I didn't find out until I moved to Dayton and changed doctors that I was being poisoned. And there was probably permanent damage to my liver and kidneys from that. My doctor, the doctor that I worked with until he retired after I moved here, was appalled. He was actually really shocked. It really can be damaging. It's like overdosing on salt. Lithium is a salt. Yeah, it's like your body processes it like a salt. And yeah, even if you're fully hydrated, if they give you too much, it affects your heart, it affects your liver and your kidneys. It's really dangerous. If you get dehydrated, having a normal amount in your system is also really dangerous. If you starve to death, in the process of starving, you're not eating any of the sources of food sources that would normally give you lithium. And so your lithium level might get too low. And you could have heart problems because of that as well. So that's one of hundreds of chemicals in your body that can be altered and can affect your body by any kind of imbalance in your diet, dehydration, anything like that. So when you get past a certain point of starvation, you have to have been healthy to begin with to be able to recover. And there's another point where it doesn't matter how healthy you once were, it's almost impossible to bring you back. The official hospital report into Adrian's death found that a lack of nutrition contributed to his death and recommended education across the trust on learning disability specialist care. In a statement to ITV News, Dr. Peter Wilson, Chief Medical Officer at the University Hospitals Dorset, said, "We offer our sincere condolences once again to Adrian's family and have apologized for the failings that resulted in his death. At the time, we undertook a serious incident investigation to identify any learning points. We have implemented a number of changes following this and have shared these with the family." The worst part of having a death like that, aside from the loss of the person who died, is that all you can do is learn from it and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. You can't comfort the family. You can promise them that you're going to do better, but their family member is still dead. The person they love is gone, and they're not going to get them back no matter what you do. If somebody was deliberately negligent, meaning that they just didn't care, or willfully negligent would be a better term, they can be punished. But aside from that, like, there's not really the best you can do is make sure that accountability occurs, and in the future, as you move forward, which you have to, you don't let this happen again. The third leading cause of death in the United States, medical errors. The first two have to do with blood vessels, heart, and lungs, all the relationships there. The third is medical errors, mistakes made by the people that you go to for help. The same is pretty much true in the UK. So what, like, what have they done to fix this? Out of all the things that they could be trying to fix, all the vaccines they try to come up with, all the new drugs that they come up with, one of the biggest killers, one of the biggest causes of early death is the healthcare system. Already, that's before they get the ability to suggest, "Oh, you're in here for a hangnail? Would you like the death option? We can give you the death option." In September, a government-ordered report found people with a learning disability are dying on an average 20 years younger than the general population, and that almost 40% of deaths of learning disabled people were deemed to be avoidable. So, to rephrase that, in September, a government-ordered report found that caregivers are cutting the lives of disabled people, learning disabled people, short at such a rate that almost 40% of deaths of learning disabled people were deemed avoidable. People who, it's your job to make sure someone else is okay, to do your best to facilitate their life and ensure that their health is the best that it can be, assist them with things they can't do for themselves. They're causing the deaths instead. And this is a female-dominated profession.
I'm sick
I
to my stomach. I'm sick to my
Yeah.
fucking stomach right now.
Sorry for the news. But it happens all the time in the care community in the care. So
Yeah, it is enough to make you sick. I don't always talk a lot about the work that I do, but a lot of times, like it ranges depending on the individual that you're working with. And it can be as simple as this person just needs to have somebody at home with them to make sure if there's a fire or a stranger comes to the door or they fall down, or something like that, that there's somebody there who's competent to handle the situation in case they aren't. To an individual who needs to be assisted with every type of movement, can't dress themselves, can't feed themselves, and needs someone else to help communicate for them. And, doesn't walk, can't walk. It could be anything from, mild or moderate to profound. And the job can range from simply being there as a backup advocate if the person needs assistance when somebody is overstepping their bounds, to being the entire advocacy system for the individual when you are with that individual, going to their medical appointments for them and making sure that the correct information is given, and all of the information that should be received is received, and the correct steps are taken and no mistakes are made. And then communicating back with the family and a home manager and maybe other staff to ensure that this individual gets the best care that you can provide. Like, you might do all of their housework, you might assist them with housework, you might help them keep track of their housework. It's not a concrete, this is what it's always like. And there are times when the job is so easy that it almost doesn't feel like work, because you're just kind of being somebody's friend. And there are times when the job is so involved that it feels like heavy labor. But you go into something like this if you want to help people. And then if people are allowing something like that to happen, where they're not providing the care that the individuals should receive, and they're not advocating for the individual, and when they visit the individual in a hospital, I guess it's different in the UK. And where I am, if I have an individual that is admitted, we can be authorized, if they can't communicate for themselves and have enough other issues that it's determined that the hospital staff might not be fully equipped to properly assist them, we can be authorized to pull a shift just staying in the hospital room with them. Like, in that situation, then it becomes my job as the care worker to facilitate all communications with the individual and the individual's guardian, if there's a guardian, or the home manager, if or both, and keep track of, like, if they take things like blood pressure, if they bring a food, if they discuss a new medication, if the medications are being given by the hospital on a different schedule than they are given in the home, anything like that. If the temperature in the room is not good, if the person needs a blanket, just what you would do if your child was in the hospital, or your elderly father or mother were in the hospital. It's the same thing. Whatever they need, you're the go-between. But I don't know if they do that in the UK, because they're
no,
on more.
no,
they
no,
don't,
no,
huh?
no carers that involved.
That's kind of disturbing, because honestly, hospital staff are usually, the way they're trained, their training really doesn't cover the needs of people who have difficulty with communication, who, or worse, who may not understand everything. And I think a lot of times if you have somebody who's had a stroke, somebody who has senile dementia, somebody who is intellectually disabled, somebody who has a mental health condition that causes them to not process reality correctly, like anything like that, a child that's too young to talk, a child that isn't maturing properly, that falls through the cracks.
That was me.
Yeah. I kind of figured some of the stuff that you told me, and it probably made things a lot harder for you in terms of getting good health care.
Having needless operations as well.
You've had operations that were unnecessary?
Yeah, my spleen was removed back in 99.
And you...
I was like, and I didn't need it, and I didn't need it, and it didn't help matters, it made matters worse. So the majority of that summer I was stuck in hospital.
Yeah, that would create probably months and months of not necessarily side effects wouldn't be the right term, but sort of cascading other medical problems that would happen if it was unnecessary like that. You would end up in the hospital like that for that long.
And I have to stay on penicillin for the rest of my life.
So it's got a lifelong impact.
Yeah.
And in the UK, when somebody makes a mistake like that, do people sue
Sometimes the process is the humiliation ritual, but some people don't want to go through that.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to sue here in the US too. Some people don't want to go through it. And then sometimes, I think sometimes people just don't want to hold one mistake against a person if it seems like it was an honest mistake where the physician wasn't being willfully negligent, but maybe misperceived something. But when someone is willfully negligent, I think a lot of times the patient does sue. And I know a lot of people think that these malpractice suits make people rich. Well, there are a handful that have, and there's enough that have that malpractice insurance is through the roof. But at the other end of it, there are thousands of people who have experienced malpractice. I'm in that number, who have never seen a dime. Not one thin dime from the medical profession. No malpractice lawsuit, no settlement, no nothing. We're lucky if we can get the satisfaction of this person was retrained so that they will not make that mistake again. Which, again, if you are at the other end of it and you're one of the higher ups going, we want things to be done well by our hospital so more patients will come here, the best thing you can do is still not good enough because you can never bring a dead person back. Families and campaigners have also raised concerns over the sharp decline in specialist learning disability nurses. And this is another huge problem, training for NHS staff on learning disabilities and autism. So autism is a lot more widely recognized now, and it has dramatically increased the diagnosis. There have also been some indications that there are environmental factors in the world today that have increased the incidence of autism. The predisposition toward autism is genetic, but a lot of environmental factors can affect whether or not you actually develop the disability. And I think there's a lot more patients with autism who are falling through the cracks because they don't necessarily advocate for themselves as well as normies, for lack of a better term.
Again, I fell through the cracks.
Yep. Yeah, some of the stuff you've been describing is almost like getting shoved through the cracks, like they created cracks just for you.
Mm.
And it's just, and I've seen that before too.
It's
And
fun watching so many people go, look how good this person is at this thing. They must be autistic. And then eventually, slowly but surely, other people sort of go, well, no, that's just someone being good at a thing. Like, that's not necessarily autism. I mean, I know a lot of autists do get really good at one particular subject, but just because someone gets really good at one particular subject doesn't mean they have a disability. What you're describing there is an ability.
yeah, but the
And
diagnosis isn't usually given to people on that basis. Not by professionals anyway. Maybe like the general public might do it, but professionals look for other symptoms.
but like someone's good at a thing, so you call them autistic, and other people start to go, well, maybe not. And I'm like here going, first time? You know the meme of the
Yeah.
guy in the gallows kind of going, you know, not everything that's better than you is necessarily autistic. Oh yeah, I was there. Back in the meme wars of 2016. I was there kind of going, you know, just because someone's better than you doesn't mean they're necessarily autistic. And
You fought in the meme wars?
the blowback. Yes, I fought in the meme wars. And the
Yeah.
blowback that I got for saying that not everyone who's better than you at a thing is necessarily autistic. Can you imagine the blowback, ladies and gentlemen? From a lot of people who will not admit to this day that they were like, yeah, Mike, you can't just you're just getting offended that everyone's calling everyone autistic. Am I?
Well, I think part of it was people using autistic and retarded simultaneously and interchangeably.
Yeah.
Some people with learning disabilities that are IQ related are also autistic. Some people who are some people who are autistic and are harder to recognize as autistic don't have IQ related learning disabilities. And in fact, you can have an extremely high IQ and still be autistic. And for a long time, they mistook autism to be an extreme form of male intelligence. And they based that idea on the pattern of being less feminine among autistic girls. But we're not less feminine because we have a higher degree of male intelligence. We're less feminine because we just don't find that fucking shit to be important. Right? I am far too lazy. Even if I wasn't allergic to it, I'm far too lazy to spend an hour in front of the mirror every morning fixing my hair and my face. I'm not going to do it. Fuck that shit. I don't have time. I got other stuff I want to do. And if people don't like it, I have made peace with the fact that I'm going to get called ugly. I don't really care. Right? And I made that peace when I was in high school. The first time I got hives from a bottle of something that was marked hypoallergenic and called the company and got told by some smarmy bitch from customer service, well, hypoallergenic doesn't mean non-allergenic. It means most people won't be allergic to it, but that doesn't always necessarily mean you. And I couldn't cuss her out because that's phone harassment. So I thanked her politely and hung the phone up, and then cussed out, my bedpost a lot because hives suck. So sometimes, people with intellectual disabilities, I have an IQ that is high enough that I have had at least one doctor tell me that the chart he had in his office could not measure it. And I have a learning disability also. and one of my best friends in the whole world. For those of you who know Honey Badger lore, Bridget, the good wife from the 7 Years in Hell story, has an IQ that is even higher than mine, and she has 2 learning disabilities. And those can cause communication disabilities. So if I had a low IQ and I went to the doctor and I said, I think I'm having these problems, and they didn't listen to me, people would say it was because, well, maybe you don't understand well enough to communicate. But I can fully research the thing that I suspect, so that when I go in, I can say, I could be wrong because these things aren't happening. And the moment they find out that I know anything about the thing that I suspect, I can't possibly have it, no matter how many symptoms, no matter how many boxes I check. And as a result of that, my diagnosis for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was delayed by about 3 years because a genetic counselor decided that I couldn't possibly have ever been able to do the things that being able to do causes you to have a high Beighton score, until I got injuries that caused me to not be able to do them anymore. Because when you do these things and you overextend, you hurt yourself and your body builds scar tissue and it gets in the way of doing it again. So instead, he denied me the ability to get the DNA test, and I had to save up $800 to pay for my own. And then I found out that actually I do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and 4 genetic markers for autism, which is what started us looking for that. And that was why I wasn't able to communicate well enough for this medical practitioner to trust my observations about myself, to get the DNA test to find out if I had EDS. This happens all across the board. It happens to women, it happens to men, it happens to old people, it happens to young people, it happens to people who seem too articulate, and it happens to people whose accents can't be understood, or people who don't have all the words they need, or people who are known to be low IQ and therefore they're just not believed. And in an environment where medical personnel can then turn around and say, how about medical assistance in dying instead of this treatment? If you go in with a broken hip, like in Canada, and somebody suggests that, and you happen to be a person with an intellectual disability who is credulous enough to accept that this person knows what they're doing, I might as well do what they said. This is going to make me sad, but if it's what I got to do, then that's what I'm going to do, right? And then later on, when they find out, maybe I could have had better treatment, maybe I don't have to do this, it's too late, and the process is already in motion, and somebody comes along and says, well, you can't change your mind because we already have people lined up for your organs. Like in Spain, I think it was Spain, it might have been Canada. Then we have one person, killed the way that this individual was killed, but for different reasons and using a different process. Richard Beer wants to know why I didn't just put my ankles behind my head. By that time, and by this time, it hurts to do that now. My hips can still be extended that way. But it'll sound like somebody breaking a chicken leg off of the thigh. And it will be extremely painful. I know that's a horrible thought to put in your head.
Feel like we're in Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah. It's an awful sound. My body makes nasty, awful sounds now. and that don't have anything to do with gas. We
Yeah,
have some
mine
super
does
chats that I
too,
should
but I
read.
don't tell the internet about it, Hannah.
Oh, you should hear what my knees sound like in the morning.
I can imagine it because I'm old too. I just, we don't want to be reminded about the encroachment of death.
You know that sound Velcro makes when you tear it apart? Yeah. Yeah. EDS, folks. The official reverse traditionalism channel said, gave us $20 and said, I don't know that this super chat ever got read last time. Just wanted to say I'm sorry if I bothered you last week, Doc. I respect your right to be cryptosexual. That sounds like he likes to fuck puzzles. Could you find a different way to phrase that? I just wanted to say really briefly that if there's a problem with incels and PUAs seeking women's approval, like how male feminists do, and MGTOW doesn't have that problem, I do consider reversing to be closer to MGTOW because seeking a stay-at-home fatherhood is about men seeking their children's approval, and men seeking a hypogamous woman as opposed to a hypergamous woman, to put alimony and asset division in their favor in exchange for not having any domestic violence or grapes service isn't about seeking women's approval at all because it pisses them off. All I wanted to say is that Warren Farrell has cited Pew Research saying 49% of fathers wish they were full-time parents, so I don't know why any stay-at-home dad conversation has to be about what women want. And personally, I will tell you that it doesn't. But that's the last thing I wanted to say on the topic unless it comes up, because I have resigned myself to the fact that these super chats are usually off topic. When I was growing up, I spent years in the hospital. Not all the time, but in the hospital for several visits every year due to severe asthma, severe allergic reactions, pneumonia. Like I actually caught pericarditis, which is not contagious, from somebody else who has pericarditis. Had pericarditis. It's an infection in the lining around the heart. When I was 8 years old, like nobody could figure out how it happened. And my mom, because she was a substitute teacher and not a full-time teacher, was able to take time and stay in the hospital with me. And between my mom and my dad, they both would have been able to do it. They had their agreement that they had decided who was going to be the person to do those kind of things and who was going to be the person to work 4 jobs, which is, they weren't choosing for it to be 4 jobs, but that's what my dad ended up doing. And running a family business was one of them. So it wasn't 4 part-time jobs. Often, when a woman is the patient's advocate, people will try to bully her into submission. Now, I was lucky. Trying to bully my mom into submission was like trying to bully a mutt that was part pit bull, part Doberman, and part German police dog into submission. It's not going to happen.
They did that. They did that to my mom multiple times.
Yep, and they will. Oh, you guys, you're a layman. You don't know what you're talking about. This is absolutely correct. Don't question us. We know what we're doing. Except, like I said, my mom was not easily bullied into submission. And, but I think a lot of times for a kid in my situation, if that kid's mom is like a normal woman, then the kid would be better having dad in the hospital because dad might be more likely to ask more questions. Why are we adding this drug? What is the necessity of this NPO order? Why does it say SOB on my kid's medical chart. Oh, that's for shortness of breath. Never mind. I have been labeled SOB many times. They do say that. SOB for short of breath. So it's not entirely off topic because it's an important conversation. Women have a tendency to hog time with the child. We do. And we also have a tendency to expertise ourselves when we've never been parents before we had children, right? Maybe we babysat, but that's not the same thing. And our husbands, or the father of the child, if you're not married to him, became a parent the same day you did. In my opinion, that's the day the child is conceived. And in situations where the parents are co-parenting, whether it's as a married couple or a live together couple or from separate households, that man anticipated the birth of that baby the whole time, probably did everything he could to protect the mother and ensure that she had everything she needed to make sure the baby was protected and well nourished and so on. He's a parent. He's not just some guy who is supplying her with the tools for her to be a parent, right? Richard Beer, even good normal, often isn't enough for women to not be bullied into submission by people that have some degree of, well, degree-based expertise, right? But yeah, we're shutting out somebody who is incredibly important to the life of the child, to the development of the child. And, fortunately, when I was a new mom, I had a communicative husband and a communicative family. And when I wanted to hog baby time because my baby, damn it, I was reminded this baby has two parents and you have to get some sleep. Get your ass in there and take a nap. And I did. And the baby was better off for it because baby daddy time is vital to the baby's development. And unfortunately, a lot of women don't get that. So it isn't a bad thing for men to talk about, sometimes maybe dad should be the stay-at-home parent. And sometimes the parents don't need to have a stay-at-home all the time parent. Maybe they need a tag team. Overlapping shifts, a little bit of other family member childcare. If the grandparents are close or an aunt and uncle are close that you trust, family time, extended family time is important. Extended family time might have protected the children of Lindsay Clancy.
He sent the dad to the store.
Yeah, she sent the dad to the store. But if there had been consistent extended family time witnessing her mentality, her mindset, and her behavior, he might have had more clues, because she had said things to him that people say stuff like that and you don't take it seriously. If it's, oh, I could just kill you right now because you're mad. And then, you don't really want to kill the person you're talking to, right? I'm going to kick your ass. You're not actively going to kick somebody's ass, but you might give them a very stern lecture. But if a mom says things like, I've been having thoughts of actually wanting to kill the children, and the extended family can be there and say, that's not normal. It's not something that she should be having. And if she's telling you about it, you shouldn't leave her alone with the children. It gives the father the opportunity, the tools he needs to say, well, maybe I'll watch the kids and you go, instead. Or I'll just take the kids with me. And he didn't get that opportunity. I talked about this on the news show. Feminists pushed and pushed to get rid of extended family closeness. And they did it. They broke up families. And that facilitated this woman's murder of her children. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 412, honey for the Badgers. I remember a case a few years ago of a girl named Grace who was killed when a hospital staff forged a DNR after botching her treatment for COVID. The first person they banned from the hospital was her father because he kept overriding treatment he knew would harm his daughter. Then they banned her older sister from the hospital. There is a lawsuit, and the court gave deference to the medical professionals. The case is being appealed, last I hear. Grace was known for playing violin at weddings, and was her concern about getting other people sick from COVID at a wedding she was supposed to play at that led her to go to the hospital. And then, of course, the hospital killed her. Now, you can tell when you're in a good medical facility or a bad medical facility by how they react to family being present. Like, in a good environment, they want family because family has a lifetime of exposure to the individual. And if there's something you aren't understanding or that you're having difficulty working with, like, why does this person keep asking for this thing? Or why does this person get upset about this thing? They can often give you that information. And if you have a question, is this the right thing to do for this person? They often have an answer for you. It's very solid. Similarly, if you're in a bad medical environment, those same reasons are why medical staff doesn't want the family around. They want to make all the decisions, whether it's in the best interest of the patient or not. And they don't want anybody there to interfere with it. So if you're in a medical facility and they don't want family around, they're not trying to act in the best interest of the patient. And it's not 100%. Sometimes they want family around, but there's one person who is upsetting the patient and making the patient sicker. That is a reason to kick somebody out of the hospital. If they come in and get into arguments with the patient and get the patient all riled up after heart surgery, then it's fair to say, you should wait until he recovers to come back and visit. But if it's just somebody that's asking questions about, is he getting enough to eat? Is he getting the right fluids? What medications is he on? I'm going to compare that to his list of medications. Did you all take note of the fact that he's allergic to drug X? That's the person that they should want there. Even if that person seems neurotic and is a pain in the butt asking questions that don't need to be addressed, like there's not a risk or a problem, it's better to have that than it is to have an accident happen or a bad thing, occur because somebody gave somebody the wrong drug or somebody had a crippling fear of something like needles and you didn't know they were going to be violent until you tried to put in the IV. So, OIC and Wowie gave us $2 and said, the sound I hate is the sound of sticky leather on school bus seats rubbing together. It's like the opposite spectrum of nails on a chalkboard, yet it is more horrible. Yeah. Yeah. So going back to the article, ITV News has seen a letter 16 charities and disability campaigners have sent to the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, urging him to intervene to halt the sharp decline in specialist nurses. Now, this is a difficult thing, too, because in any profession, when there's a sharp decline like that and you're trying to get more people into it, it relies on people with the necessary competencies and aptitudes taking an interest in doing that job. Because you don't just assign people jobs and then they do the jobs. They choose to get the education and they choose to apply for those jobs and then they choose to keep them, show up for work. The learning disability nursing workforce has declined by 43% since records began in 2009, the letter reads. If nothing changes, it is predicted by 2028, there will only be a tiny number of learning disability nurses qualifying in England, with a pattern of reducing numbers in other UK countries too. This, by the way, is also happening in the United States. The profession is in crisis, and urgent intervention is needed to avoid imminent collapse, the letter says. And what that looks like is if you got somebody in a hospital with a disability like this, there might be no one on staff in that hospital who understands the difference between a patient with a normal health condition progressing the way that, you know, the textbook describes it, and someone with special needs who may experience symptoms they can't tell you about, or who can't correct the record if there's a mistake, who won't, if somebody hands them the wrong pill, necessarily recognize that's not my medication, and who may even do things like try to stand up even though they know they can't, or react violently to things that you wouldn't expect someone to be afraid of. John Sparks, chief executive of MNCAP, the learning disability charity that is sending the letter to the health secretary, said health bosses need to act now. Recommit to the workplace or workforce plan, fund training, and stop this crisis before it's too late. The coalition is calling for an urgent meeting with ministers to agree on a rescue plan for the profession. ITV News has also learned that NHS England failed to meet its own targets to provide mandatory learning disability and autism training. Oliver McGowan mandatory training is the government's gold standard program for health and social care and staff in England.
It's supposed to be, but the professionals don't really take it seriously.
See, that's a problem too. We have a similar set of protocols, and one of the things that we go over is the patient's Bill of Rights. And I run into people that have problems accepting some of the rights. And we had a conversation in training one time. This was when I first started, so it was 2014. It was the year of Gamergate. And I sitting in class, and the teacher for that class brought in a second teacher who had some background specifically in rights advocacy, and he asked us a question. We're gonna have an imaginary patient. The imaginary patient's name is Ethel, and he framed it in a nursing home because we had nurses aides and DSPs in this particular class together. So Ethel is just, you know, living her best life. She's in nursing home care. She's competent to make her own choices. There's no medical order determining what she may or may not eat. The doctor hasn't said she can't have any specific things or that she must have specific things. And she decides one day that she's just going to eat ice cream for the rest of her life. She's, 96 years old. She's decided that she has been good all of her life. She deserves ice cream, and that's what she's going to do. That's what she's going to have. Does she have the right to do that? And of course, the whole class is brainstorming. How can we make ice cream nutritious for Ethel? But he kept on us, right? Not asking how we can accommodate. Does she have the right? If you can't fix the ice cream and it's just ice cream and there's nothing you can do to make it better for her, does she have the right to choose to just eat ice cream for the rest of her life? And it took like 10 minutes before I finally worked up the gumption to raise my hand and speak in front of an entire classroom full of people and say, yeah, she has a right. It's her right to make those choices. Without a medical order, we can't take that right away from her. Everybody's like, oh, you can't. That's not right. It's not possible for her. She would die of malnutrition if all she ate was ice cream. What are we going to do? Well, it's not going to change whether it's her right. We can encourage her to eat other things. We can strive to make ice cream for her or obtain ice cream for her that has supplemental value, like the old person supplements you get at the grocery store, like Ensure and Boost and stuff like that. And they make those. They make them for people with diabetes. They make them for people who are old, and they're obtainable, and they can be prescribed. But unless a physician has said, you cannot give Ethel just ice cream to eat. If she decides and she's determined and you can't talk her out of it, you can't persuade her, please just take a bite of something else, just try something else, and she still says no, then you give her her goddamn ice cream and let her enjoy her life. And that is the...
Reminds me of my mum. She won't eat like proper food, but she will eat like donuts and a yum yum.
Yep. And it's funny, when you get old, like old, you start to crave carbs. I don't know why, but every elderly person that I've worked with has been more interested in pancakes and mashed potatoes and bread and stuff like that after a certain point in their life than they ever were during the rest of their lives, and than they are in any other food.
Because she's 60, she'll be 70 in November.
Yep. So I guess when you hit that point, maybe it's taste buds, maybe it's something else in your body, but if somebody isn't going to get better and you're not, you can't change that, then you're not even doing them any good to try to make them eat something besides ice cream if that's what they want, to make them eat something besides the foods that they like. So it is a difficult thing for people in healthcare to accept. And the state makes it difficult too sometimes. You say, if you work in the state end of care for people with disabilities, part of your job is to remind the staff for people with disabilities that they get to have activities and go do things that they want to do for fun. And it's the staff's job to help make sure they get to go do that.
Even when they don't approve of it.
Yep, even when they don't approve of it, even when they don't like it. Like, if I have a client that wants to go to a rock concert on my shift, even though crowds scare the fuck out of me, I don't know, if I don't know those people, and I hate loud noises. I've actually never been to a rock concert indoors because of this. It would be my job to take them. And I could try to trade shifts with somebody, but when it comes down to it, it's my responsibility as a DSP to do that. And if I had a client who was a smoker and they wanted to go outside and smoke a cigarette, it's not my right to forbid them to have that. As long as they don't have a guardian that has the right to override them telling me, don't let them do this, I can't stop them. The only thing I can stop them from doing is stuff that will get them put in jail. And that's only if I'm physically capable. So, there are clients that are much, much bigger and stronger than me. But different people with different intellectual abilities still have a broad variety of physical capabilities or disabilities as well. But that thing of these people have their rights, and their rights override your sensibilities. That's a difficult one for people who work in this profession. And if you're not prepared to accept that, it's not a profession for you. And because of that, as we get into more and more me first culture in the world, we get fewer and fewer people being willing to do the type of job that I do, or to work in a nursing home, or to be a caregiver for children with disabilities, anything like that.
Adults tend to be forgotten.
Can you say that again, Richard?
Adults with learning disabilities tend to be forgotten about.
Yeah, lots of learning disabilities do tend to be forgotten about. Yeah. Did I get that right?
No, so it goes kids, teenagers.
Kids with disabilities.
No, kids with disabilities, teenagers with disabilities, and the adults tend to be forgotten.
You're right. Adults with disabilities do tend to be forgotten about. You're right. And they tend to be kind of demonized for it. Like, why haven't you grown out of this?
Especially if
demonized.
Especially if you're a black man.
Mm-hmm. And then there's another thing too that happens, because this can hit people with various different types of genetics. They can be petite, they can be big and strong. They could be the guy who is, 6'6" and wears a size 4X t-shirt, not because he's overweight, but because that's the size of his frame at his ideal weight. And he can have a level of disability that can cause him to respond to things that upset him, or being denied something that's important to him, or feeling uncomfortable in the moment, the same way a toddler might. But when you have a grown man who is bigger than everyone else in the room, who is stomping his feet and hitting the wall with his hands and yelling and maybe biting himself, or if he knows cuss words, saying them loudly, right? Or pushing people even. The way that people react to it is based on his size and the volume of his voice and whether or not they're afraid of being injured by him, not what his capabilities are intellectually, what he may or may not understand, and things like that. And so when you're a DSP, those are things you have to take into consideration, especially if you're helping someone with activities out in the community. Similarly, I know this from not my professional work, but from my personal life. When you have an individual who has a seizure in a public place and people don't know what's going on, and they react very irrationally to that as well. And I know that people with disabilities, although I've never personally worked with that situation with a person who was under my care, I know that there are people with disabilities where the disability can cause a lot of seizure activity, especially with birth injuries or neurological disorders. So this gold standard program for health and social care staff, all these types of programs can do is provide informational training and some practice, that the individuals learning it know what they're supposed to do, but it can't make them care. It can't make them careful. It can't make them respectful of the rights of the people that they're providing care for. That has to be in their character already. Let's see. Richard Beer gave us $5 and said, not an annoying sound, but the flashback to the sound of corduroy pants as you walk. Yeah. And gave us another $5 and said, are Doc and Lauren coming to the Dayton meetup? I need to know how many beaver nuggets to bring. So that's a Doc and Lauren question. I don't know if they're still here, still listening.
It's gonna be a rough thing. I don't know if we can make it.
Is it something where we need to try to do a fundraiser if we're going to get you here? Because that's a possibility.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will bring it up with Allison after the show then, that we'll figure something out. Because definitely want to have you guys here and Brian and Lindsay here. I don't know if we'll get any of the Canadian Badgers to come, but because stuff between the U.S. and Canada is a little rocky right now. But well, I guess we'll see what happens. I was able to go to Canada not too long ago. I guess it's been a year, maybe more. But in any case, we'll see what happens. Like so put that on hold, but I'm gonna try to make it happen. And then let's see. Oh, I see. And Wowie said, "Oh no, we already read that one. The sticky leather on." If you get into sounds that we hate, we're gonna be here all night because there's a lot of sounds that I hate.
The Oliver McGowan training. I know a couple of people do that. Like they go around the country trying to teach nurses and doctors about it, but
Yeah.
the nurses and doctors don't take it seriously. So it was about a guy named Oliver McGowan. He died because of incompetence for the most part, and his mum set up the training, so nothing can happen again.
His mom started up the training. Is that what you said?
Yeah. But with the DNR stuff that's happening in the UK, that it's very difficult to do because you've got if you're learn disabled, you will have a DNR next to your name.
And it's legislated, right?
Yeah.
That you don't get to say, I don't want this.
Nope.
So for the public, if you don't already know, DNR is do not resuscitate, which means that they don't do CPR. They don't do anything like use a defibrillator.
If you have a learning disability or autism.
Right. And they don't try to bring you back. They don't use any of the drugs that get used to bring somebody back. No adrenaline shots, epinephrine, none of that. If you have a breathing emergency, cardiac arrest, if a seizure causes you to stop breathing, which occasionally does happen, none of that. And it's one thing for a person like I've known people, I've had people close to me, like both of my parents did this when they were at end of life, and they both had stipulations. If this happens, anything after that is a DNR order. Mom didn't want to be intubated, and Dad decided if his heart stopped again, he was done. There's only so many times his heart was at 25% effectiveness as it was. And there's only so much you can put your body through before you're just not going to be able to use it anymore. And that's probably the best way that it can be put. And I've known other people that have had those. I had a friend who was significantly older than me. She was more my parents' generation that had lung cancer, and she kept it at bay with treatment for like 20 years. But it's exhausting to do that. She'd get it into remission. It would stay in remission for so many months, and then it would come back out, and she'd have to go back on chemo. And she'd put it back into remission, and it would come back, and she'd have to go back on chemo. And then at the last time, she just told him, no, I'm not doing this anymore. this is too much. I am in my 80s now. I'm not gonna. And pretty quickly, the cancer just took her. And it was her right to make that decision. And it's fair to allow someone to make that decision when they don't want to fight anymore. But to take that decision away from somebody who does want to fight, in my opinion, is reprehensible. It is beyond reprehensible. It is, again, I will use the word evil. I don't think it's any different than committing a murder. If someone can fight on and survive, and the only reason you're telling them they can't is because they have an intellectual disability, not because, well, you don't really have a chance to win this fight. It's just going to make the fight last longer and be more painful for you. But, well, you're not smart enough to fight this fight. That's beyond inhuman. I think that's a demonic level of evil. And whoever made that decision really deserves to be just called, out and out called a demon.
And also,
Probably, I'll never probably be able to get into England again.
Also, the press keep on planting stories about disabled people spending their disability money on stuff.
Isn't that how money is supposed to be used?
But they see it as a slight on the taxpayer that this disabled people can have a nice time or don't think about their disability. So they don't want they don't want the money to spend it on funds.
You're supposed to suffer all the time because it's
yeah.
That's what
the
taxes.
British public. That's what the British public think of disabled people.
Here's the way I think of it, because I've earned enough and been the breadwinner in my family enough, and even had some of my earnings confiscated by the state to pay child support for my 2 stepdaughters. So I think I count as a taxpayer. And I think that if you're going to choose something to be mad about in terms of how your tax dollars are being spent, if I was in the UK, I would be, pissed as hell about the money that was spent prosecuting Count Dankula for telling a joke. And the money that is spent paying cops to go to people's doors and harass them for posting memes and liking memes.
They still took £800 out of his account.
Yep, they did. But I wouldn't get upset that the money that is being spent to provide care for people with disabilities might include a couple of movie tickets so that they can have an activity, because that is literally part of your quality of life. It's as important.
And they get mad about the discounts at cinema. They get mad about the bus travel. They get mad about discounts to theme parks. They get mad about discounts at restaurants. They get mad about when a person sees someone. They get mad about anything.
And people get mad about the wrong things. If you're going to get mad about somebody being given a pass on something, maybe not spending so much on something because the people who charge for it know that that individual doesn't have the capability of earning the higher amount, and get mad at the people that are bribing your members of parliament. And maybe get mad at the members of parliament for taking those bribes. And get mad at the people that are running your banks and arranging the rules under which you do your banking. so that you can't afford to live. Quit picking on the people that have the least amount of power in the world just because you feel like you don't have the capacity to bully the people that have the most. And yeah, a night motorcyclist mentioned a guy is in jail for buying a baseball bat from a sporting goods store to use to play baseball, by the way.
And the police tackled him to the ground.
Yep. It's insane. I wouldn't want to actually be in the UK right now because of all that. It's like, I can't even begin to. Is there anything you can't get arrested for in the UK? Is there anything that's still considered normal that you could just do this and you never have to
No.
worry that it's going to get you in trouble?
If you look at a woman and you're ugly, if you talk to a woman and you're ugly, they will put handcuffs on you.
If you talk to them, how they put handcuffs on you?
No, if you talk to a woman and you're ugly.
Oh, if you talk to a woman and you're ugly, yeah. Yeah, because of the misogyny laws, right?
Yeah, or if you stare,
Yeah.
if you stare at a woman on public transport, you get arrested.
Oh, jeez. Staring. Oh, yes. Eyeball rape.
I'm not making this up.
I know. I wish you were, but I've read those the bills before they were laws, and it's pretty much exactly like you say. Of course, if Nice Motorcyclist has another one. If you are a migrant, he says, and yeah, if you point out that a man is staring at you, but he's a migrant, they might arrest you if you're a UK citizen. It's kind of funny. They are protecting women from the migrants that are ignoring British laws against violent crimes by arresting British men for saying good morning while ugly. And we thought driving while black was bad in the United States. Imagine being arrested. There's only one man I know who's ever been arrested for a greeting. And again, that was Roger from the 7 Years in Hell story, arrested for a drive-by greeting that never happened. But in the UK, it's routine. You greet the wrong person, straight to jail. Do not pass go. Don't collect anything. So this training, this Oliver McGowan training, was established in 2022 to save lives. This was recent, geez. To save lives by ensuring the health and social care workforce have the right skills and knowledge to provide safe, compassionate, and informed care. The training program.
They don't have compassion.
That does not surprise me. I wish I could say that compassion was more common, but I also know that most care workers are women, and a lot of them took the job to have a job, not to do some good in the world. And I know that happens here too. If the wrong company is handling the situation, I've heard horror stories from people that come to work with the company that I work for about companies they came from, and have actually coached at least one person through the process of seeking help for the people that her previous company was responsible for because they were doing illegal things. And I didn't get to learn what the results were because I didn't get that much time with her. But she did some training at the home where I work the most. And because she did some training there, she had some overlap with one of my shifts, and we had a long conversation about it. And and I learned that it's not uncommon in the United States that in some of the cheaper places. They will understaff routinely, and then the patients aren't getting the care that they're supposed to be receiving because nobody has enough time during their shift to do everything they're supposed to be doing. And I had to deal with that at a nursing home. That's where I faced retaliation. I called the ombudsman for the elderly, and she came in. It was a lot of fun. She came in with the voice of God and started bellowing at everybody in charge, and it was great. But of course, I lost that job. Not that I didn't find another job really quickly afterward, and it was worth it because the nursing home, like the state, took it over. The state came in, took the nursing home over. People went to jail. They fired everybody that was above just floor nurse, and they forced the company to completely replace all that staff. And the last time that I was in there, that home had improved significantly. It was amazing, the turnaround. And it continued to be that way until the entire thing was picked up and moved to a different building. I don't know if everybody that was living there continued to live there or if they went to other homes or how that went, but there is recourse. If there's abuse, if there's neglect, stuff like that, there is recourse. But you have to know who to call, and you have to know, be willing to accept the fact that you are a target for retaliation, and there's a limit to how much you can be protected by the authorities. And it's a rotten set of facts, but it is a set of facts. The training program that we're talking about was named after 18-year-old Oliver McGowan, who was autistic and had epilepsy, and died in an NHS hospital after being prescribed an antipsychotic drug, which he never should have been given. He had a known intolerance to the medication, which was clearly marked on his record. A review found a general lack of understanding and acknowledgement of Oliver's autism by hospital staff, and that his death was potentially avoidable. Integrated care boards responsible for planning and commissioning NHS services across England were ordered and funded to ensure 30% of NHS staff were trained by 2025. ITV News has learned that all regions in England except one have failed to meet this target. Some areas are as low as 3%. Paula McGowan, Oliver's mom, who campaigned for Oliver's training and also signed the letter to the health secretary, has told ITV News certain areas in the UK have not rolled out the training, and that is so disheartening. People with a learning disability are still dying from the same conditions and the same failures. The government needs to do an awful lot more. These people matter, and I would question why our government don't see it the same way. It's constant battle, battle, battle. On January 23rd, 2023, the usually fit and healthy 17-year-old Lewis Cartwright became unwell. His school teachers noticed that he was paler than usual and had vomited, so they alerted his mom, Jackie. 2 days later, Lewis was still unwell. His parents took him to their local hospital, where he was seen by a consultant in the emergency department. Lewis had Down syndrome and autism and was too anxious to have his blood taken. Over the course of 10 days, Lewis was seen by at least 3 doctors at the hospital and at his local GP surgery and at home. Despite requests from parents, doctors did not believe he was unwell enough to be sedated so that a blood test could take place. So they refused to use the one tool they had to get the test done that they needed to find out what was happening, what he needed them to do for him. He was saying mumbled sentences which we couldn't work out. I went over to him, I picked him up, and he fell into my arms, and he died, says Jackie. Oh, I missed an important paragraph. Sorry, guys. Less than 2 weeks after the first signs of illness, in the early hours of February 3rd, 2023, Jackie found Lewis on the floor looking vacant and incoherent. And then the next thing I just read about the mumbled sentences was next. Almost 3 years on, Lewis's inquest is being held at South London Coroner's Court, and his family are hoping to finally find some answers. I'm feeling really scared, genuinely quite nervous, Jackie tells us, over orange juice and cereal at home with Eve, Lewis's sister, and Ian, Lewis's dad. If you've been affected by any of the issues in this story and would like to share your experience, you can contact us at investigations@itv.com. So if you are an individual... Don't do it?
The British press are evil.
Are they? So these guys, they've written about this, but they're not willing to take up anyone's individual case.
They're not normally just kind to people with families with disabilities. So it's very strange.
Yeah.
They usually attack.
I wonder if they're trying to get a law passed of some sort or another. But this goes on. It says, it was from the start that things went wrong for him. He didn't even have access. He didn't even access basic health care. He was just white. As I was in the hospital looking at him, I had all the overwhelming fear of what this could be, because actually, Lewis was never ill. He'd never even had COVID. He rarely gets a cold. He never had a tummy bug. He was a super healthy kid. The family waited years for the chance to finally find out what happened and why did their 17-year-old son, who had a learning disability and was autistic, but was healthy, die. This is the problem when you're the mom of a child with a disability, Jackie says. Everything is 20 million times harder than for everyone else. You're hitting brick walls constantly. You're fighting all the time to get anything. It's a constant battle, battle, battle. You're just resigned to the fact, here we go again. Another difficulty, another excuse. One of the things that I've noticed is, personally, is that when people with intellectual disabilities describe symptoms they're experiencing, particularly women in medical care, but it's across the board. Men do this too. They don't believe them, or they think they're exaggerating, or they think they don't know what they're talking about. And sometimes a person can't articulate what they're trying to explain. So somebody might be having chest pain, but instead of saying, I'm having chest pain, they'll say, my heart doesn't feel right. Or maybe somebody is having heart attack pain, but all they can tell you is that their arm hurts. But they're not thinking about the fact that they're also short of breath and they're sweating and they're a little dizzy, and they might not tell you those three things. And so a DSP might give that whatever medicine that they have for pain, usually aspirin or Tylenol, and leave it at that until the symptoms get scary. They get scary enough to notice, and then it might be too late. You know, if you have somebody that complains about pain a lot, and again, especially if they have a disability that makes them childlike, it can be treated like they're attention seeking instead of in pain. So there's a lot of things that get overlooked, and it's really discouraging. And that's before you even get to the issue that we've been, like, all of this, the neglect, the failures to keep track of what the patient's actual care is supposed to be, the mistakes that are made, like and the lack of compassion. When you factor all of that into the discussion on should we give the healthcare system the power to suggest to people that they should try medical assistance in dying instead of treatment for, recovery treatment for their condition, and the fact that in the UK you already have the government mandating that people with intellectual disabilities have a do not resuscitate order on their medical care. It's really going to be difficult, really going to be super difficult to trust that this storm of factors will not result in a cleansing, like an ethnic cleansing, but a cleansing of people with disabilities. Oh, you came in here for a minor health condition, but you have an intellectual disability and a DNR. Would you like to try medical assistance in dying instead of maybe going to therapy or getting a Band-Aid on that cut, having 2 stitches? Like to me, it's a terrifying prospect for anybody that has an intellectual disability, for anybody that loves someone with an intellectual disability, for anybody whose parents might be aging to the point of starting to develop a little bit of senility, for anybody who has a condition that causes them to become similarly disoriented when they are short of breath from, say, asthma or COPD or a heart condition. What are they going to do when somebody has a stroke and they lose a lot of their function? What are they going to do when somebody has a heart attack and after their heart surgery, their heart is only at 25% function and they can no longer do a job and they can't walk without a walker? After several hours of evidence and testimony, the coroner is unable to determine Lewis's medical cause of death, and it is recorded as unascertained. The coroner did not find that any neglect by healthcare professionals contributed to Lewis's death. So nobody ever was held accountable for what happened to that man.
Nobody, yes.
Boy, he was only 17. Not man.
Well, in the eyes of the UK law, once you turn 16 and you're technically a man.
Yeah. They do the same thing in the United States if you commit a crime. You can't be treated as an adult if you want to buy alcohol or vote or drive a car or not vote, but join the military, or you can promise to join the military though at 16, but you can't join the military. Right? You can't get married without parental consent. But if you commit a heinous crime, more likely than not, because you have some sort of dysfunction that makes you less adult than the people around you, they will try you as an adult and put you in jail with adults.
It's like when I first went into hospital when I was 18, I didn't look my age and I didn't have my age. They put me in with the kids.
Yeah, I could see that because I've met you and you do look younger than you are. I didn't realize how old you. I thought you were like in your 20s when I met you, and you were almost 40 at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and being an alto and a soft-spoken individual, like a lot of people that get shortness of breath are soft-spoken. I'm an abnormal bellower for people that have shortness of breath.
And they still deny me. They still deny me the AAC machine as well.
They deny you what?
An AAC machine, like a talker.
An AAC machine, yeah. Being soft-spoken isn't enough to get it anyway, huh? Yeah. I would recommend when you can using your phone or writing things down to show people if your handwriting is better than mine. I recommend that, but like if I try to do it, people are going to be like, I can't read that.
I have dyspraxia, and I should have been writing with my left hand, but they would hit me every time I would try to write with my left hand.
So the last two sentences you said, I need you to repeat.
They would hit me if I tried to write with my left hand.
Okay, so you were one of the kids that was abused for being left-handed.
Basically.
Yeah, that happened in a lot of schools here, like parochial schools. There were one of my friends actually, again, Bridget, the good wife from the 7 Years of Hell story, went to a parochial school, a religious school, for part of her youth, and she was corporal punishment was used on her, not spanked. The nuns there are fairly well known for cracking your knuckles with a ruler for being left-handed, and it made her ambidextrous, but it also gave her very massive anxiety around things like test taking and writing assignments, which is cruel because, like I said, she has probably one of the highest IQs of any woman I've ever met in my life. I haven't even met many men that have an IQ that high or higher. One of them was her brother. They're both really, really brilliant. Like enough to be jealous of, but they're both a lot of fun to be around, right? And they've both been through stuff like that where people gave them a rough time for things that are completely innocent that nobody should pick on you for. There is nothing malicious or evil or bad or wrong about being left-handed. It's just a genetic thing that happens, and a difference in the way your brain works. It has absolutely nothing to do with your soul, and it's not an affront to other people, or it shouldn't be. But some people are just assholes.
Because I used to play guitar hero and rock band upside down.
because you were left-handed?
Yeah.
That fits. That's kind of cool. Actually, just turning it upside down. I could see that though. It goes on to say, outside of court, Jackie and Ian are in shock. Despite the coroner's findings, they've always believed that more could have been done to save Lewis's life. They're saying they've done everything they could have done for Lewis. We don't believe that's true. Ian tells us. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right for the UK or not. Like half the people I know in the US pronounce it with the long I. He had a disability. Go ahead.
In the UK, it's Lewis. So.
Always the long I?
Yeah.
Okay. He had a disability. He had Down syndrome. He was a frightened kid, he says. They could have done something and they refused to. Jackie looks shell-shocked. See, that's the thing that strikes me about this. All they had to do to get the blood test done, that they needed to find out what was going on with him and what they could do for him, was to sedate him so that he would not be afraid of the needle. And they refused to do that. That's not even that big of an ask. Like, they don't have to put him under general anesthetic.
And there's no malpractice in the UK as much as in the US. So.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have got sued if something went wrong.
Even if it was found that they should have done that and didn't, they wouldn't have got sued.
Yeah. If they could just give him the sedatives.
We have a couple more super chows. Richard Beer gave us $5 and said, imagine going to a rock concert and seeing the performers taking the stage using their mobility aids and scooters. Oh gosh. So you're thinking about going to see Aerosmith, is that or did the Rolling Stones still perform?
Yeah, they're still performing, and that Tommy Lee guy still performs. I can't. Motley Crue, they still perform. Yeah,
they're still performing. Wow, yeah, that's and of course the boomer rock stars that are still performing, they're all in their 70s and older. Those are like
U2,
the toughest of the tough, right?
yeah, U2 are still performing. Um,
Yeah.
Sabbath are not performing for obvious reasons. Motorhead are not performing. Rush are still going.
Yeah, Russ is still going. But then there's the Gen X performers, the people that were close to my age when they became famous when I was young, like in college, are having strokes from the drugs they abused when they were in their 20s. So
Because
in
when
some ways, the boomers were a little smarter about that, or
yeah,
tougher, like Keith Richards. He just is
like
preserved.
yeah.
I think Keith Richards is actually a zombie. I think Alice Cooper might also actually be a zombie.
Oh, he's still performing as well.
Yeah.
He's playing.
Well,
He's
he
playing,
does a lot of stuff actually.
he's playing at the O2 with his band,
Jeez.
Red Vampires. So
See, he's undead. That's why he's still here. Um, Then we also have Richard Beer gave us $5 and said, a third I have heard about, maybe he meant a thing I have heard about NHS is that there is a significant amount of personnel who are migrants from Nigeria. And many
yeah,
have had someone take their certification exams for them.
yeah, they do that a lot as well. The the, the hospital that I was at 2 years ago, a lot of the staff were like Nigerian, but they were sort of nice to me because I was half Ghana guy. I was from Ghana, so they were like nice to me.
They were nice
I,
to you because you
I
have
was, yeah, I have African blood.
okay. And so you have ancestry from, did you say Ghana?
Yeah,
Okay. That's
because they can
yeah.
because they can tell that I'm from Ghana for some strange reason. So they were like super nice to me. So
Well, that's probably similar to being able to tell the difference in physical appearance between, say, people from Russia and people from France and people from Italy or Greece. Um, there's probably differences in facial types and like shapes and facial features that are common to a particular region, just like anywhere else. That would make sense. And it is people when are in a foreign country, it always is kind of nice in a way to run into somebody that's from your area. When I was with my mom in Japan visiting our sister city as a ambassador from my hometown and as my mom's helper because she was post-op from a neck surgery. Um, we ran into some Canadians. And since Canada and the United States are real close together, and I'm from the northern United States, and they were from a southern part of Canada close to Ohio, um, we had this great conversation about the differences, between where we were from and where we were in the moment and everything. And it would be neat to run into someone back home if we were there working and trying to speak a second language and things like that. I've found that a lot of companies here in the U.S. are also hiring migrants from. We get a lot of migrants from Nigeria as well, and it's It kind of depends. There's like sort of two distinct sets of people coming over to work here in the United States that are from Nigeria. There are people that apparently, really didn't have it easy when they were in Nigeria. And they're so happy to not be in Nigeria anymore that they will work their asses off and do the best possible job they can. And they just want to stay here and be of enough benefit to the people around them that nobody wants to get rid of them. But the other distinct group seems to have gotten some kind of coaching before they left the country. Here's how to scam every American you meet. And they are obnoxious. And it really is difficult for the people in the first group to work in environments that have become familiar with people in the second group, because they're presumed to be similar until they prove otherwise. And I would hate to have that happen as a worker. And unfortunately, depending on the environment you go into, all too often the second group outnumbers the first group. I've been fortunate that where I have been assigned in my company, I haven't run into very many of the second group. I've mostly run into the first group. But when I worked in retail, it was the other way around. And it's not just like they're mentioning in Rumble, the Nigerian princess scam. This is more like, oh, I totally did all the tasks that I was supposed to do, so you should be able to just do your tasks and everything will be all hunky-dory. When you get halfway through the shift and you realize that there's a bunch of things that should have been done before you came in, and you can't do half your tasks because they rely on these other tasks being done first. So, yeah, it's bad. The rest of the article here, let's see how long this is. Okay, so we do have just a little bit left. None of it makes any sense, she says. I'm not going to be able to process this, ever. I'm just completely devastated and shocked. There is no doubt in Jackie and Ian's minds that Lewis died simply because he had Down syndrome. If he had been a 17-year-old boy who articulated that he did not feel well, he would not have been sent home from the hospital. Lewis was allowed to die due to his disability. Health Secretary Wes Streeting told ITV News, it really is shocking, the unequal outcomes we see for learning disabled people. Not just unequal access to care, but shockingly lower life expectancy, the health secretary said. That's why we have committed to publish every single year the data about those patients and their care, so we hold ourselves to account and the public can hold us to account to improve their care. Of course, that relies on the public looking at the data. An NHS England spokesperson said the rollout of Oliver McGowan mandatory training on learning disability and autism is one of the largest health and social care training programs in history, with more than 3 million staff starting the course. We've been working with local health systems across NHS to develop a sustainable model so that more staff have this essential training, including investing in better data collection, so we can identify areas that haven't met this target and to provide more support. And the difficult thing, so I look at this and the common factor that I'm seeing in these cases is that individuals who could not articulately advocate for themselves, mostly men, who could not, and boys who could not articulately advocate for themselves, were allowed to die or were killed through the actions of healthcare workers who didn't try hard enough to make sure they knew what was going on and what they could do to serve the individual that they were there to serve. And I think that this problem is partly due to the fact that when you look at the intellectual disabilities community, there's a larger number of men in that situation and boys in that situation than women and girls. And people don't have as much compassion for people that they don't feel like they can get something from, and they don't have as much compassion for people if they're male. And when you combine those two things, then you see a situation where the level of care and compassion is close to none. They're just managing people like cattle. It's unfair, and it is heartless. And then they want to pass a law that says the medical profession can counsel people to select death instead of treatment. Instead of having the fail-safes in place, having the stipulations in place that will limit the suggestion to only cases where the individual has a terminal condition that is killing them, that is going to kill them painfully if they don't have medical assistance in dying. If they just make it a broad spectrum, wide open-ended, yes, you can do this and you can suggest it law, it's going to be disastrous. So I hope that people in the UK that are listening, you know, what I just highlighted here is in and of itself a crisis. What we've been talking about here is in and of itself a crisis. And it is a crisis that affects men.
And I will not be here if I get sick again.
As a result of that order, that do not resuscitate order, it's very possible. What Richard just said is true. If he gets sick again, they may not do enough for him. Very possible that they may not do enough for him to preserve his life. So this isn't a crisis in and of itself. But in conjunction with the effort to pass that law, it's imperative that your MPs hear from you that any such law, if it's passed, needs to have very strong, insurmountable protections to ensure that it's not being used to engage in eugenics, to euthanize people against their will, to trick people into dying, to get rid of people because they're expensive or inconvenient, or to cover up neglect and abuse. Because those things will happen if there's nothing written into the law to protect against them. They will probably happen even if there is something written into the law to protect against them. But at the very least, families will have some recourse under that circumstance, and people will be held accountable, and the occurrence will not be as frequent. So it's very important. Like, if you have any skill at all in writing letters, your MP needs to hear from you. And next week we are going to look at a little more. This is not the only crisis. There's also a crisis in terms of relationships between men and women. That is, we looked at statistics in the past on young men committing suicide. And loneliness is one of the big reasons that it happens. So next week, we're going to talk about that. And then the week after, we will go back to the article we have been reading. And we'll continue through to read a little bit about the bill itself. And as we conclude, and it may not all be in 2 weeks, it may take another month. But as we conclude on this subject, we'll talk about the specifics that need to go into a law like that. What does the law need to forbid in terms of medical personnel using medical assistance and dying as a form of patient care?
And they use it as a cost-cutting measure as well.
Yeah, we can't have them doing that. We can't have them using it as a cost-cutting measure. But with that, I don't know, do any of you have any last things to add on this particular subject before I call it? So
No, over here. I can't wait for next week.
yeah, okie doke. In that case, I'm going to say thank you to my co-host for going through this with me. I managed to hold my temper. I didn't punch anything, so that was all good.
Yeah.
It's so hard when you read about people being treated like this. And you can't protect everybody. It's hard. But thanks everybody for going through this with me. And thanks to the listeners for listening to this subject matter, because it is rough. And thanks to everybody that works in the background to make HBR Talk happen, especially Brian, who does most of the background work. And good night, all.
Bye.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.